Hi, welcome to this demo where I show you how to connect to API1, create a consent, and invite your customer. Once your customer has onboarded and connected their ERP system, you can use that connection to list invoices, get an invoice, and post journals back into that ERP system. So the first thing to do is to connect to API1, and you can do so using credentials we provide. Once you've connected and generated an access token, that is the key to all other APIs in API1. So next, you can create a consent. Once you've created a consent, you can take the ID and invite your customer. They are shown a screen where they can pick the ERP system that they use. You can either direct them here, or you can direct them directly to one of those ERP systems. Once they choose the system they use, they're prompted to identify themselves, and they can do that using Bank ID. Once identified, they consent to sharing their data from Fortnox. Then they log in. Accept some permissions, and that is the end of the onboarding. Now the customer has consented, you can use API1 to list invoices from their Fortnox ERP system. And here we have some invoices. I can then search for an invoice by its ID. And this returns a list of all the information on the invoice. I can just verify that this invoice does exist in Fortnox. And here we have the invoice. Finally, I can post the journal back into Fortnox. I can see this journal has been created with the ID A79. So back in Fortnox, I can see a journal entry with the ID A79. So I can do the same thing again, create a consent, take that consent ID, create an invite, and come back to the onboarding platform. And this time I will choose Visma. I'm prompted to consent to sharing data from Visma. I can then log into Visma. Accept permissions. And that is the end of the customer onboarding. This time, using that new consent, I can list invoices from Visma. I can search for an ID. And I can see all the information from that invoice using API1. If I jump over to Visma, I can see that this invoice exists. And finally, I can post the journal into Visma. It has the ID that starts with DCE9. So back in Visma, can see this journal has been created. So what I've shown is that you can use API1 to invite your customers and onboard them. They can connect their ERP system, and you can get invoice information from that ERP system. You make the same API calls regardless of the system they connect to, and you can retrieve information from any of those ERP systems without any additional work.